This GTR has been in Japan waiting for us to bring it here for over 2 years. It's finally here. It's for a client. We're building this car top to bottom. We've got a long list of parts to order, so let's get going.
My job is to kind of inform you guys on what we're going to do aesthetically with this car. Alex typically handles all of the drivetrain stuff and all the stuff that makes it go really, really fast. What I like to do is the look of the car. As Alex mentioned, although this wasn't actually acquired for a client, this was a car we acquired a few years ago and had it sitting over in Japan waiting for it to become 25 years old so it can actually be legally imported into the country under the 25-year rule. What had happened was, as time passed, this good friend of ours, a client that we've known for a long, long time, he had an absolutely stunning GTR and he wants to relive his youth a bit. And so we're going to make it look almost identical to what he had previously. After multiple conversations and him saying, you know, I really want to get back into the GTR market, he knew that we had this car waiting to be imported and knew the time was coming. He had some money to spend and wanted to make this come to life. And so he twisted our arms and, long story short, we handed the car off to him. We're building it to his specifications.
First things first, we are color changing the entire car, but we're going to go ahead and jump into that with Daryl at a later time and go over all the mods that are going to get done to the body of this to get color changed. R34, GTR, RB26 spec. This has your prime choice of turbos. These are, I believe, steel wheeled turbos instead of ceramic. These you could actually push to a higher boost pressure as opposed to the R32 and R33 stock twin turbos. This is like the most updated version aside from getting an N1 complete motor from Nismo. We are not keeping the factory R34 GTR drivetrain. This engine's getting pulled out. We are also getting rid of the factory individual throttle bodies because once you get to a certain threshold of horsepower and boost levels, the factory ITBs can actually be a little bit of a restriction. And we also want to incorporate some more modern technology to this car. So this will likely be a drive-by-wire setup with a large single throttle body. And if it's not drive-by-wire, we're still going to have provisions in the ECU that are going to modernize the drive and the feel of this car. Because if you've never driven an R34 before, a bone stock R34 GTR actually feels a little heavy. It drives heavy. I don't know how else to explain that, but like that driving feel that you get, this is supposed to be Nissan's super all-wheel drive sports car. Outside of the seat hugging you and the ergonomics of the interior, it doesn't feel that sporty when you're driving around spiritedly on the street. As opposed to some of the other all-wheel drive cars that you can get into, like an Evo, I guess in this generation would be probably an Evo 7 or an Evo 8. That car is super spunky, it is responsive, it feels sporty, it feels light, and it really goes. Yeah, this car is actually underrated for its generation in horsepower because this was rated at 280 horsepower, but the B&R 34 GTR actually made more horsepower than they claimed. So like I said, this being an updated version of that engine, this is like your factory freak, as we got in the US with certain cars where they rated, I don't know, 390 horsepower, say for like the supercharged Cobras that came out in 03. They actually almost made 390 or more factory wheel horsepower. So this is one of those types of cars where it makes more than what it's rated at. This motor's coming out. We're putting a Greddy Crate RB 2.8 liter engine. I have to go ahead and order the front and rear new differentials, either OS Geekin or Nismo, along with front and rear drive shaft axles. We are going to go ahead and already replace those just in case this client decides to just, hey, I'm going to do an 8,000 RPM clutch dump. Hopefully the axles don't break. This is meant to be a street car. It's going to be a baffled wet sump with all the proper drainage for the head going back to the oil pan. We wanted to go dry sump, but this car wasn't going to see track that often, so we didn't feel that it was necessary to go through with that cost. It is going to be a single turbo setup now, so the stock twins are going to disappear. There's not going to be a new updated twin turbo system. We have a manifold in question right now. We're between two options. It really depends on the spacing and how the manifold fits that I already have for the car. As some of you may or may not know, the RBs actually require a lot of fueling. If you watch all those Tsukuba Time Attack videos of R34 GTRs crossing the start line after this crazy hot lap and get onto decel, you just see flames for days. These RB engines typically require a lot of fueling, so we have a new radium fuel system for this car. It's got an in-tank fuel pump hanger with 2 pumps inside the tank. We are going to run an external surge tank system that is also going to hold another 3 pumps. And with that system, we do suspect that it is going to be more than enough fueling for what we're going to throw at this car. The final goal for this car is to make 800 all-wheel horsepower. It's kind of a tougher goal only based on the fact that the client for this car actually really wants to hone in on the fact that he doesn't want to sense the amount of turbo lag that the car actually has. So with the matching of turbine housing and the gear ratios that we selected with the transmission and the power band of this setup, we're hoping that we can really hone in on that goal and make it happen for him, because this car is just going to be a monster to drive. His old car was actually an R34 GTR, probably now 15 years ago, and that had big twins, but this was in an era of cars being built that they had a very short power band. So those cars were generally between 5,500, 6,000 RPM of full boost to maybe 8,500 RPM if it was like a surprisingly well-built motor and had the supporting oil pump and the mods to make that RPM happen reliably. This new setup, it's meant to rev to 9,000. I do want to limit it so that way we can sustain the reliability and the longevity of the motor. We're going to try to rev limit it at about 8,700, but that's also going to be based upon what the turbo is doing at that RPM. So if the turbo is still peaking at that RPM, we're going to probably have to be changing the turbine housing to try to make that fall within the power band that we want for the car. Ideally, I want this car to be from 4,500 to 8,500, shift at 87. That is a huge power band with 6 gears going up and down. And that's a little hint for you to figure out what transmission is going in this car, but holy shit, it's gonna give you chills every time you sit in this seat. I got chills thinking about it. The factory Getrag 6-speed transmission in this car is also going to be swapped out. We actually found an R32, R33 GTR complete gearbox with the transfer case. We need that mechanical transfer case for what's to come for the transmission in this car. We had to coordinate gear ratios based on engine RPM and overall power goals, what tire size. It's not just here, let's just pick whatever ratios and hope it works out. I really wanted to fine tune the details. What's gonna be the max top speed if at ever it hit 8,500 RPM in 6th gear? What are we doing at that top speed? From what I know right now, it's not gonna be a roll race car, but it can be if he wants it to be, because right now we have it geared to top out at 225 miles an hour. It's a slightly shortened 1st through 3rd gear, and we'll go over the ratios later once the transmission gets here and who we're getting it from, but it's gonna have no lift shift, it's gonna have a strain gauge, it's gonna have auto blip, it's gonna have all of these new modern day car amenities that belong in this monster of a street car. All right, some of the other stuff we got ordered for this car is those Nismo 18 by 10.5 plus 15 R34 GTR fitment wheels specifically for this car. We had already acquired those probably a couple months prior to the car showing up because it was a group buy. So we had to jump in on the group buy to make sure that we got these in time for when the car was ready for the client to go ahead and make that step and be like, hey, yeah, I'm going this route, let's go full-fledged and make the craziest street car we could make. So Nismo 18 10.5 plus 15 gloss black with the laser etched Nismo writing in it. So that's really going to play off really well with the color change that's going to go on this car. The brakes, as of right now, we have decided on R35 GTR Nismo brakes. Essentially, Nismo makes kind of a heritage style kit where it's brand new front and rear calipers, front and rear rotors, brake lines, brackets, everything to fit on this car and keep it retaining the factory parking brake. And again, it's brand new Nissan Motorsports stuff. So you have an original parking brake. You can go ahead and drive this anywhere. You can go to track, beat on it. It's gonna have good pads. It's gonna have good heat dissipation from the rotors, but you could also go to the grocery store, put the e-brake up, and you're gonna be good and safe. As of now, all street cars need to have a mandatory factory parking brake just because it's so needed. Some of the cars that are in our shop, we don't take to certain areas just because we're like, oh shit, we don't have a parking brake. We can't park on a hill. We have to bring a freaking rubber wheel chock, and that's kind of ugly to take pictures with. Along with some of the other parts that are going on this car that are also from Nismo, some of the Z-Tune categories, that's just the final exclamation point to the whole package. Those Nismo 18 by 10.5s, just housing that monstrous 380 millimeter front rotor and R35 GTR brakes. Tires, we are still sticking with Yokohama's. As you can see, this car does have Yokohama Advan 8008s. Later on down the line, once the wheels get here, we are gonna be running, I believe, a 295/35 18, and that is going to be a Yokohama Advan AO52 for everyday driving. As much grip as you can get with a 200 tread wear street tire without it being an R compound. Technically, I consider it a street R compound. That tire is gonna wear extremely quickly on this car with 800 horsepower and a to be. So that's what we're gonna do with the wheels and tires and the brakes. All right, so that's enough of the modifications that we're gonna do with the drivetrain on this GTR and the footwork. Let's go ahead and throw it on over to Daryl so he can go over the body changes and the color change.
It is a early 1999 V-Spec R34 GTR, and it is in stunning condition. You know, it's hard to actually see a GTR of any year, whether it be a 32, 33, or 34, come from Japan without some form of surface rust or something. This car has none of that. It is probably one of the nicest, most solid cars we've seen in a long time. So with all that being said, we're gonna color change it, and we're gonna make it black. And one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to make those decisions on, okay, are we going to turn it into a Z-Tune car, which requires a Z-Tune hood, which requires Z-Tune fenders, a very unique Z-Tune front bumper. I know that they're not actually referred to as Z-Tune bumpers, but you know, the Z-Tune kit actually had a bumper with a very unique, very aggressive lower splitter. It had the S-Tune skirts, and then it had the S-Tune rear arches, and then the rear spats that covered the side view of the carbon diffuser, which is on all V-Specs. With all that being said, Z-Tune parts are through the roof. A Z-Tune carbon hood, 20 grand. Z-Tune carbon fenders, 5 grand each, 6 grand each. FRP, about $3,500, $4,000 each. Used, of course. You can buy this stuff from Nissan, but they're all back ordered. It's gonna take you a year, maybe a year and a half to order those parts and actually see them arrive. You know, for wanting to build a car now and not a year and a half later, you're gonna have to step up and find someone likely in Japan or Canada or whoever has acquired these original Z-Tune parts and pray that they're not gonna try to get rich off you. We're in the search now. We did actually acquire a set of brand new unused Z-Tune fenders. The hood, just we're not paying 20 grand for a hood, and I don't know that we have a year and a half to wait. The next step is to literally disassemble the entire car. We have the Too Fast, Too Furious Skyline GTT/GTR conversion being done here at our shop. We have multiple other projects being done. If you remember back to our BMW 1M build, that car happened to be talking about that car up there. We utilized a friend of our shop, and that is Autobond Auto Body. They're in Costa Mesa. They do nothing but high-end work. I've already talked with them. Because we have so much work in the lineup, they're the only other shop that we trust to do some of the work for us. We're gonna do all the prep work here. We're gonna do all the tear down here, all the glass removal. Everything's gonna come off this car. You know, when the engine comes out of this car, the entire engine bay is gonna be prepped. It's gonna be painted. There's gonna be no remnants of this car being white anywhere, other than the data plate tag referring to the code name for the paint color white. No one will know. It didn't come out of the factory, black. And it's a shame to think that we're gonna strip one down and color change it. But hey, you know what? We're a shop that's gonna do it the right way. Honestly, we're not chasing rust issues. We're not chasing an old beat up weathered car. We're starting with a beautiful car. So I wanna be a GTR R34 owner again. This was supposed to be that car. Our friend wanted it more than I do. And considering I've got some other secret squirrel projects up our sleeve that I haven't shared with you guys just yet, you'll see why. What this really makes me want to do is take the red GTT that we already had converted to a GTR body in Japan. I'm thinking I'm going to build that car into the GTR that I really, really want again. It's not going to be a real GTR because it's a GTT, but I've said this before. You can go back and look at some of the old videos. I prefer a GTT in terms of performance, handling characteristics. I love the fact that it's a lighter car. It's a tail-happy car. The RB25, that Neo motor, is very capable of squishing 700 horsepower out of it. Makes for a really fun car. And if it looks like the wide-body GTR, the bigger brother, I'm perfectly okay with that. So yes, this car has inspired me to move into that direction for the build on the red GTT. So, you know, we'll see what happens there.
All right, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys for sticking around this long. Don't forget to subscribe. You're not going to want to miss what's coming up next. We have a huge bundle of parts coming. Some of the things we didn't disclose yet, but you're going to have to subscribe and wait and see. For now, we're going to go ahead and tear into this, get it ripped apart, get it ready for body and paint, and we'll see you guys on the next one. TK said, all right, so, because he said I do that all the time. Damn it. I do. All right, so we freaking made it. And then when he told me that, I'm just like,
okay, so, yeah, so.
All right, so, I'm gonna do it my normal way. You.
Welcome back, guys.
You, TK. GTR.
Damn, Adrian still has the model lock back from his days of modeling.
drivetrain of this. Shit. God damn it.
It's too hot.
Fuck you, Keaton. Fuck you, Dan.
Too hot.
So annoying. Alright, cool. It's for a client, so we're gonna go ahead and tear into this car right away. And fucking shit! We're gonna tear into it and rip it, dude.
It's ripped.
It fucking rips. You're not gonna wanna miss out, so don't forget to subscribe, and we'll catch you guys later.